What's up there, all you space lovers? It's craziness of the internet here, and we're back with another video of EVE Online. And today in Factional Warfare we'll be going over some of the most basic PvP builds and things that you should know when you're going out and engaging and hunting and looking for player versus player fights in EVE Online and low sec and Factional Warfare space. There is pros and cons when it comes to each ship that you use. These designs that I'm going to show you guys right now are alpha and omega friendly, but remember, EVE Online is a friend game, so it's best to play as a group, not as a solo pilot. It is possible to play solo, but remember, the best ship is always friendship. So today we'll be discussing frigates for the Gallente Federation. Now remember, you as any other pilot can design any of the ships and use any of the modules however you wish, but there is certain aspects of the ships that are designed for certain ways to play EVE Online. Now when you're thinking of the Gallente Federation, most people might not understand that they are a hyper class federation, meaning they use both armor and shield, but they're heavily set to drones more than guns. So being more heavily set to drones than guns means that they are either going to brawl right up close into your face and dish out as much damage as they can, because some of the blasters shoot faster than any other gun in the game, as their cycle times are reduced in many other aspects. With that said, knowing that they're a hyper class faction, their weaknesses are sadly newts. So if you newt one of these ships, or you newt hybrid weapons in general, it doesn't matter if they're on any ship, they're going to have a hard time struggling, especially if they're not buffer and they're some kind of active tank, whether it's shield or armor. Let's get into these builds right here. You can see that this right here is the Tristan. This thing is super cheap. The way that you would use this thing is you have to always remain at long range, as this thing is designed to kite, meaning that you have to be further than usually around 18 kilometers to 30 to 40 to beyond from your opponent. So if we go right here and simulate the build, you can see first off that it doesn't have very much defense, meaning you have to always keep your range and keep your distance. When it comes to kiting ships, you want to be a clean 18 to 25 to 40 to 50 and beyond kilometers from your opponent. So this vessel right here is completely structure tanked, so our health should be the last bar always. We're not using a damage control on this one because we don't even want to engage them. What you want to do is you want to get into locking range, which is usually around 35-36 kilometers depending on your tune skills, because remember, this is also alpha and omega friendly. Most people would put a damage control 2 down here in this low slot. You could yourself, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but the reason why I run them like this is to get that extra DPS. But as you can see, these are hobgoblin 1s, and I use the target painter to turn them into hobgoblin 1.5s. If you're doing PvP by yourself, I would suggest that you never run with hobgoblin 1s. You always make sure that you're running with hobgoblin 2s, as you will understand later in EVE Online, whether you're a new player or old and you're getting into PvP, that little simple 5 DPS, 10 DPS, 12 DPS here and there actually does add up and allows you to win some of the most epic fights that you'll ever get yourself into. So if you're rolling around in this build in Factional Warfare, you usually want to make sure that you're to the site. So you would warp yourself to the site and then sit around there at like 20 to 30 kilometers in the middle range, trying to see if you can catch somebody that's going to land onto the jump gate, then jump into the site. So that's a good way to catch them. Or you could preset yourself inside the site about 29 kilometers from the beacon, and then you could wait till somebody comes in, keeping an eye when somebody would come in on your overview on their velocity, so that you could tell if they are micro warp drive fit or afterburner fit. Because basically, if they're afterburner fit and they're not paying attention or killing your drones, this thing is going to annihilate them and just completely destroy them. So you guys can see right here that this is the cheap version of this fit. So we're going to go ahead and get into the next one now. Alright guys, so the next one that we're going to get into is a brawler. So that means when you're brawling, you have to be up close. So we're talking within 2,500 meters, which is 2.5 kilometers to 10 kilometers. Anything outside that, around 12 kilometers, 13 kilometers, is considered mid to long range. That's where the Amar ships, if you guys ever had an understanding of what it's like to brawl to kite, The only class that's kind of in the middle is the Amar ones because they have the higher tracking lasers. When you Tech 2 them out, they allow for the range of 10 to 12 to 13 kilometers in average, and with you coming in closer to them, it allows the tracking to track you. So remember, when you're brawling, you want to be as close as possible, and you usually want to try to mitigate your enemy's DPS or the tracking of their guns by orbiting your opponent. But you can see right here that you need to have the light neutron blasters because you want to dish out as much DPS as possible with your drones in the Tristan, because the Tristan is one of the hyper class build ships of the Gallente Federation, meaning you usually want to use all kinds of builds and the designs that hyper class it into what it is. All of the weapons, rigs, and equipment that will go onto this ship right here on the list. So let's go ahead and simulate this. Also, this character is extremely new and has almost no skills when it comes to combat, engineering, all that stuff. But remember, all of these builds are also alpha and omega friendly. So if you see things like this where I have a power grid issue, and even if you ever have this on any other ship, you just go ahead and hold your mouse pointer over the flashing red bar, and you can see that it has 0.39% missing. So all I would need is a 1% power implant. So once your ship is stable, if you're in an Omega hands and you have basic skills and stuff like that, and like more than decent engineering skills and weapon skills, you'll be able to fit this no problem, as it's super easy. So what we got here is we have the compact capacitor booster. You do need this, and you put Navy cap because they weigh less in your cargo hold. You make sure that you put Navy Cap 400s into there, and you use your Void up close for the most damage possible. If you overheat them, you can see that's 163 DPS, which is more than enough that we need for a good 1 versus 1 fight. In a 2 versus 1, we're probably going to struggle, and make sure that when you use your ancillary armor repper that you stick your nanite paste in there. So that's going to give us extra boosts to our repping power, but the downside to that is it's like charges of ammo, so once it runs out, it's going to be extremely low healing, maybe like 20 to 40. So make sure that when you're in a fight and it runs out, that you set to auto reload off. That way it does not start reloading, but it'll still rep and use a little bit more power than it used to, but you'll get maybe of 20 to 30 more hit points back. Also remembering that Gallente Federation is a hyperclass faction, so when it comes to its ships, a lot of the ships you need to build in 2 different ways other than the other ones, where like example Caldari's all shields and Amar is armor ships. So by doing this right here, we went double repper. A lot of players will actually do the Atron thing, which you shouldn't do, by putting the ancillary here, and then just by using this by putting either damage or a plate. But it's extremely more valuable as a brawler player to put 2 reppers here to combine that with your compact capacitor booster, and to make them think that they might have you on the run. You always structure tank yourself so that in case you have any bleed effects whatsoever, that it will bleed over your armor, and any crit hits or any actual like destructive hits won't kill you instantly. You have the structure tank behind you, so that allows you to get those extra reps in there if you didn't get your cycles off in time. So when it comes to the brawler, it's pretty strong, but also remember that its downside is if you nude it, it could nude itself out, because without the capacitor boosters, it will nullify itself eventually by draining its own power. And if your enemy neutralizes you, you're going to struggle under heavy pressure. So make sure you choose your fights wisely when it comes to brawling, and understand your range, and take a good moment to understand your ships, whether it's any faction ship, no matter what, just as long as you know what you're doing when it comes to the aspect of brawling. Now let's get into the next build. Alright, so this right here is probably one of the strongest basic Tristans that you could get, and it's the nuding Tristan, because in the hands of a right pilot and choosing the right battles, it usually will win about 82-83% of the time. But a lot of players might have it designed where they run 3 neutralizers instead of this roll tungsten compact plates. Now like I said, you guys don't get confused, and remember that the Gallente Federation is a hybrid faction, meaning you must design some ship to be able to withstand the critical and the breakthroughs of the armor and the shield, etc. when it comes to designing them. So right here we went ahead and made sure that we are able to use that hyper ability to our advantage. As example to give you, I've run this ship many times with 3 neutralizers and I'll get 2 cycles off. Running it with the 200, it gets me extra 5 cycles. So running it with the armor is extremely more powerful, at least in my perspective. Remember, in EVE Online, everyone has their own journey and everyone can choose their own choices and their own ship build. There is no wrong way to fit your ship as long as you fit your ship within the standards of what you're doing, whether it's PvP or PvE. But let's get back into this build right here. So this allows you to take heavy pressure from the critical hits with your armor and then bleed into the traversal bulkheads, which is your structure tank, and then that gives you the ability to overheat your neutralizers and get those extra cycles off. That's extremely valuable when it comes to player versus player combat. And remember, in this ship you want to always choose your battles correctly, meaning you want to choose to engage ships that need energy to reverse and repair their shields. Maybe they need energy to keep their weapons on. Maybe they need energy to repair their tank, repair their armor. It's up to you as a pilot flying around in low sec and factional warfare space to get an understanding of what the style of ships are around you, what the kind of builds are, what basic doctrines maybe your federation or your alliance or your group or your corporation is running versus what other people are running versus losses in the system. Sometimes it could get overwhelming, but you just have to remember that EVE Online is a very massive game, but if you just focus on small aspects of it, is extremely fun. And the next one here, we got the tank Brawler. Now this thing is extremely strong as well, because remember, we're getting the actual buff from the armor repair amount from the frigate. So every ship class that you have upgraded per level skill, you will get 7.5%. If you have level 5, that's a total of 35% rep bonus, which is extremely strong. So we went ahead and put on 2 small armor reppers and the rogue tungsten plate, which gives us extreme tank just in itself. As long as you learn to catch the cycles into your opponent's volley, then you'll last longer than you're used to surviving. We also always take into account that Gallente is, no matter what we want to do with it, a hyper build faction, so we have to have that traversal bulkhead in there, so we have that in our rig slots, allowing us to have that huge bleed effect. And when they think, oh, I got them because my armor's going down, oh, they're about to die, surprise, you have that huge bleed effect and you're just repping back up so that you can gain back some more armor. It's a pretty strong build. But the downside to the tank one is you do not have the web, so you have to make sure that you're paying attention to the angles on the screen of your enemy ship and the distance and range of the orbit. Other than that, you should be okay. And remember that the Incursus does come with the ability to launch 1 drone, so you can get into some sneaky little aspects by doing things like that. Maybe you want to put like an ECM drone there so that you may get that lucky roll. Maybe the god said that today's your day and that you're gonna get this guy jammed. Alright, now we got the Atron here. Now this ship specifically can be designed, I've seen so many pilots use it in so many different ways that there really is no specific hold to say that the Atron should be flown this specific way. It should just be flown specifically to what you need at the time. Whether it's brawl, range control, maybe do a little kiting, that's up to you. But for now, let's get into the build here. So this one right here is a fast brawler. There's not much to say about this build other than you just need to get on your target as fast as you can. That's why you have a compact micro warp drive. You just do the old web scram them, that way you can nullify their movement completely and give you the benefit to allow your ion blasters from the fall off bonus that you get from the Atron frigate to finish them off. Also remembering that the Gallente Federation is one of the main brawling and structure tanked factions, meaning it needs to get up close and personal, and if it's not doing that, it's usually at range, blast you around with its rails. So remember that in your aspect of building your ships and understanding the game, whether or not you're engaging a Gallente on Gallente vessel or you're the Gallente pilot engaging any other ships and any of the other factions, or you're a faction ship from all those other factions engaging a Gallente ship. You have to take all of that into account. So with this build right here, you can see that it's mainly just get on them, start dishing out as much damage as you can. We have the damage control tube because you want as much buffer into your structure tank that you can get. We've also increased our structure tank even more, and then increasing our buffer even more with our rig slots, as we put 3 small traversal bulkhead 2s into that rig slot, giving us even more of that ability to finish off our opponent, which is the main goal here when using this type of ship, as this is just get in your face, bang bang, shoot them out. Other than that, there's nothing else to say. The Atron will always be a pretty good and powerful ship in the hands of any pilot, so don't think just because you see an Atron on scan that it's anything to do with weakness. It just depends on how you fit it and depends on the pilot's skills, but this could also be transferred to the aspect of any other ship. So let's get into the next build. Alright, so this one right here is a good little one for you guys that I thought you guys might enjoy. This is the range fighter. So in the factional warfare zones, you want to use this thing usually inside of a plex. Make sure you're set up about 7.5 kilometers from the entry point that you entered the site in, so that way anyone that comes in, you quickly just lock them up and you web scram them, and you make sure that you're usually null equipped so that you have extra range, because we're using the small hybrid locust coordinator, which brings your range about 8,500. If you're fully skilled, stuff like that, it's usually around 9,300, 9,500, meaning it's around 9.3 to 9.5 kilometers in range. Having that ability to have nice range like that and just dish out the damage if they can't get you, especially themselves if they're brawler fit. And then just think on top of that, if they were to enter the site and then you see that you lock them up, web scram them, and they don't have an afterburner and they have a micro warp drive, they're pretty much screwed and they can't do anything about it. Or even if they themselves are an afterburner and don't have a web, you also nullify that aspect. So giving this little advantage of the range is a huge buffer in the game that a lot of people don't know about, but you also have to understand that it takes a lot of skills and understanding to be able to mitigate damage and understand that the little tiny tweaks of angular effect and the little tiny distance of control can actually win you the fight. And then if you look over here, you can see that the other version of this ship, the cheap version, does the exact same thing but gives you even more range as you sit just a little further using the rail guns, and then when they drive towards you, you just overheat your webifier and your scram, locking them up, and then when you slow them down, you drag their velocity almost to nothing. You just keep unloading on them and firing. Make sure that when you're doing this, you angle off to a centered point into the solar system so that if you have to, you can just warp away instantly. Also, we will be discussing tactics and things like this that I'm talking about right now in later videos, but I hope that you guys get an understanding of how you can fly the Atron in factional warfare and how there's many ways to control a fight. So those right there are the 3 basic frigates that you would want to skill yourself into in factional warfare with the Gallente Federation. And I hope that these builds allow you guys to learn some more aspects of the game and help you improve your combat skills and your PvP domination inside the factional warfare zone. And I hope to see you guys in the next videos. Peace.